I'm going to play a clip from Wolf Children in its entirety. Putting aside what you know about the characters if you do know them, what are the things that you think this clip is trying to communicate about the characters through its visuals? You can leave it in the comments down below if you want. If you don't want to, that's totally fine, but at least make a mental note. To me, this less than a minute lateral tracking shot is incredible storytelling. As well as being a clever way of moving forward some years in the film, it tells us about how the kids adjusted to school, or didn't adjust, their relationship with each other and the other pupils. It showed how engaged they were with school just based on where they were sitting and the fact that Yuki is always interacting and Ame had his head on the desk pretty much all the time. Much of it looking outside the window, which is where he wanted to be. And these are just a few of the things. I could go on, but I don't want to just throw a long list out there, so I'll move on. I have wanted to make a video about Wolf Children for a long time now because I really love this film. It's truly beautiful in every sense of the word, and it's one that I just feel like I have to talk about. It has characters I root and cry a lot for, great dialogue across all of the characters, which in of itself is a feat because it had to be good across 13 years that this film covered. It also has a brilliant soundtrack, especially in the snow scene. But what I love the most about this film, however, is how brilliantly it communicates through its visuals and how it embraces silence. When I say silence, I don't necessarily mean without any music or sound effects, but without dialogue. Those are the scenes that I think make this film the gem that it is. Luca is Pixar's latest film as of the recording of this video, and is one that is created pretty much entirely from the artist's homes. Don't know if it's a coincidence, but the result was a film that doesn't feel like a Pixar film, and that's not just because it's gay as all. Unlike Pixar's previous films, which have always seemed to focus on pushing CGI to its limits, Luca is a film that takes place mostly in a little village and a few other places here and there. It also doesn't look realistic at all, yet it is a film that somehow felt very real and raw. The sea creature stuff aside, obviously, this was a film about two guys experiencing a new world for the first time, making mistakes, finding new passions, and just messing around. There wasn't a big disaster on the island, a big villain didn't show up, and none of them teleported anywhere. The stakes of this film, other than the sea monster thing obviously, literally involved whether or not they could eat pasta properly, and whether Luca could learn to ride a bike. It was delightful and I loved it. By the end of the film, I got to know Luca, Alberto, and I don't know why I keep forgetting her name, Guilla? Guella, I hope I'm saying that right, really well. I feel like I know these characters better than I got to know many of the other characters in Pixar's films, and that made the emotional ending, TM, for this Pixar film so powerful. Everything led up to that moment, and while Pixar films usually do earn their endings, this one was especially earned and was especially powerful. The scenes of Luca dreaming up wonderful, often naive scenes, times where the characters were just hanging out and trying new things, and that scene where Luca was losing his mind over astrology are what helped to make this emotional ending, TM, so powerful, because we know just how far they had to come to get to that point. Now, Wolf Children was this turned up to 1,000. Instead of seeing the characters over a few days, we got to see them over 13 years. Instead of having to win a race and not get caught in a character's other form, they just had to not get caught, while otherwise just dealing with the general life stuff for most of the part. That's it. There isn't really a plot as such if you think about it. Characters just kind of get on with their life. And the stakes were mostly handled at the beginning, so they didn't even spend that much time not trying to get caught. And as a result, we are just a fly on the wall watching them grow up, with many of the scenes showing them growing up being the silent scenes that I mentioned earlier. And yes, there's a lot of them. Satoko Okudera, screenwriter for Wolf Children, mentioned in this cute little book that I got with the Wolf Children Blu-ray that I feel like the scenes in this film that have no lines would become the famous ones. While I wouldn't say this film is especially famous, I really wish it was, there are most definitely the scenes that stand out to me. Wolf Children at its core is about a single mother basically being a hero, and raising two kids that have an aspect to them that is not accepted in society. Its undertones are about sacrifice, grief, growing older, and love. Across all 13 years of the kids being born and growing up from adorable little babies into, well, adults in terms of wolf years, but tweens in human years, the characters and their growth are the true focus in their story. What they do is really only there to communicate the characters. And this film achieved this with flying colours by taking the time to bake these ideas into the visuals instead of just talking about them. Spirit Stallion of the Cimarron was a big disappointment to me because it just couldn't grasp this. It had brilliant visual storytelling and had moments where we got to just be with the characters, experiencing what they experience. Yet, it was totally ruined by a voiceover telling us things we already know.
Okay, I admit it. She was charming. In a stubborn, irritating kind of way. So, I let her show me her world.
It was honestly infuriating, and it was enough for me to not like the film because of it. And stepping out of animation for a second, the original Blade Runner almost also suffered a similar fate too, by having a voiceover explain many things in one of his versions.
I don't know why he saved my life. Maybe in those last moments he loved life more than he ever had before. Not just his life, anybody's life.
Thankfully, the Final Cut version, released in 2007, doesn't have this voiceover, and while I haven't seen the original theatrical version, I can only imagine how annoying it would have been. Wolf Children again stretched to its limits in the other direction. Many of these scenes very well could have had voiceovers over them. An example where this film could have had a voiceover was when the kid's father, a man simply named the Wolfman in this film, could have had a voiceover from Hannah, the mother, saying that the Wolfman is really caring towards kids and she likes him because of that or whatever. I wouldn't have been annoyed if there was a voiceover at this point. It was right at the beginning and they were setting the stage, so it wouldn't have mattered. Yet, the film still didn't do a voiceover at this point because it trusted us to be able to see and understand for ourselves what was happening. On top of that, I also feel like it intentionally went out of its way sometimes to leave gaps in the dialogue for us to fill in, even making it blatantly obvious at one point by literally leaving out words from a sentence in a way that totally works. It was an absolute joy to fill in these gaps, and it also played a very important role in this film. This is a film that needs its audience to get invested with the characters' lives, because there's not really much else going on other than watching them grow and develop. By giving us these almost silent scenes where we could be a fly on the wall simply observing these characters as they struggle through life, We get to build our own view of these scenes and get to connect with them based on our own experiences and interests in a way that a voiceover pushing a certain way of seeing the scene would spoil. I love snow, for example, and have my own experiences looking over vast fields of white before sledging down them. I also had my own uncommon interests, which my parents have given me the space to experience, and I've had my own worries about my mum as my sister left home, as well as when I left home for uni. Not only do the struggles in this film let me reflect on my own life in a way that totally destroyed me emotionally, but it helped me to really believe in the connection between this mother and her kids. As we understand the kids' struggles, as well as the mother and her struggles, we can tell that their connection is strong. Yes, the siblings fight, as pretty much all siblings do, and yes, they do sometimes project onto each other, but despite that, in the little interactions here and there, I can feel the love between the characters, all without any of those extra layers that many films have to keep us entertained throughout the film. The crazy thing is that even just from a single less than a minute clip, you can see this all rounded up in the fact that Yuki sees Ame being bullied, runs to protect Ame, and then just walks off pretending nothing happened, which is basically their relationship in a nutshell. When looking up this scene, I came across this video by Every Frame a Painting, who gave his thoughts on the scene, although more focused on the emotions brought along by the fact that it was a lateral shot, rather than the shot itself. It's an interesting watch that I do recommend, but why I'm mentioning this video though is because I noticed this comment underneath the video. To paraphrase this comment, it basically said that the word love wasn't mentioned a single time in this film. Not even a single time. Yet I feel like this is one of the films that best shows the manifestation of love between a mother and her children. A love masterfully shown to us and not told. So that's the video. I just want to make clear that I am not saying that other films are bad for not being as small scale and character driven as this film is, but I do wish that there were more films that would be as intimate as this film is. It was great to see Pixar do this with Luca though, and I was happy to be able to include it in this video. If you like this video, be sure to subscribe for more, and please, if you haven't seen this, and Luca in fact, go and see them, they are both brilliant. I do think Wolf Children is the better film though, so if you're going to see any of them, see that one first. Anyway though, stay safe out there, have a great day, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye.